Hello everyone and welcome to the Deercast. We're recording this in May, so the roebuck season is in full flow. A few of you have contacted us and asked about head preparation or skull preparation, whatever you want to call it, and we thought what better time to do a video on this, which is the AKAH Roe Jig. It looks like a piece of medieval torture equipment. It comes with this, which should give you a fairly good indication of what this is for. It is a jig for cutting down skulls. So the idea being that you start with something like this and you end with something like this, cut to your specification. How it works is very, very simple. So it comes apart here at the top and you then put the head in there with each of these sort of bulges here fitting into an eye socket. You then clamp it back together, you adjust these bars at the back here, which are guides for the saw, and they've got wing nuts on the back of each of them here, and that allows you to adjust the height of this, or shallowness of it, whatever you want to call it, so that you can choose what sort of cut you put on your roebuck head. So it can either go up or down like this, and the front one does exactly the same as well. I've used this one for about 2-3 years now, so got a fairly good idea of what it's like, and thought I'd give you guys a very quick update on it. It's $39.99 from Bushwear, and it's the AKAH Roe Jig. As the name implies, it can only really be used on roe skulls. I have used it on muntjac and Chinese water deer skulls, and it does a perfectly fine job. But anything bigger than that, and the heads just won't fit. If you want to do your skulls before you have boiled them and before you've taken the flesh off, sometimes depending on how big the head is, it just won't fit in here from a perspective of actually being able to get the head in and the saw through there. So if I grab the saw, the idea it works is that the saw goes through each of these guides here. We'll try and include some photos for you. Through like that, and then that allows you to then cut through the skull once it's sort of clamped in position. The pluses to it is that when it works, and this can sound like a very silly thing to say, it works very well, and you do get a much cleaner, better, more level and uniform cut than you would if you just sort of eyeball a skull and decide you're going to cut through the back of it with a saw. My criticisms of it are that, as you can probably hear as I'm kind of handling it around, it's all sort of bolted together. It's made from separate bits of metal, and I find, especially, it's got nuts and bolts on it to be able to sort of tighten it all up, but I find that because of that motion of sawing through something, it does then vibrate, and I find a lot of the nuts gradually sort of shake themselves loose. And I have had one or two times when I've been cutting through a skull, actually one of the guides for the saws has come loose and actually has started moving off, and I've started kind of cutting at a funny angle. So I do think it would just be slightly better if it was sort of tightened up in some way, or some of those bolts, instead of them being wing nuts with blank screws on the back here, is actually, if you had say a Phillips head or something on there, you'd actually be able to really make sure they were really, really tight. The other thing is that when you're adjusting the height for the saw guides here, is that you can eyeball to make sure that you get each of those sort of parallel on each side. But actually, what would have been really good if there were some kind of marks or indents on here, so that you could say, okay, well, I've adjusted that to 3 centimeters, so I'll set the one on the other side to the same length there. Yes, I know I could take the time to measure those out and mark them on myself, but again, I don't think it would have taken much for AKAH to have potentially done that on this unit. If it was ever so slightly bigger, I think it'd be much better. I tend to cut my skulls down before I boil them, and as I said, I do sometimes struggle to actually fit. Not necessarily fit the skull in here, but fit the skull in here and then get the saw in as well. Final criticism of it is that, and you can probably see there, part of this metal has sheared off. It's not made from brilliant quality metal. It is stainless, so I mean it's easy to clean and doesn't seem to rust, but at the same time, I have found bits on it have kind of bent, because again, you are sort of cramming a skull in there and then trying to saw through it. So if it was just a little bit better made, I think it would be great. Sorry, actually, one other criticism on it. The saw, a lot of people have said is really poor quality. I haven't struggled with the actual quality of the saw itself, but the handle, all the cuts on it on the wood are very kind of flat and angular, and it does mean if you're gripping it quite hard and putting pressure on it, it's going to sound really wimpish. It's actually pretty uncomfortable to hold in the hand, and I do keep intending on taking a bit of sandpaper to it, just rounding off some of those corners to make it better. Otherwise, I can't really say much more about it. I mean, as I said, you can see from this, it does give a sort of good result when you get it right. And to be honest, apart from sort of making your own jig out of something, I can't really see any other better way of doing it. I think it's a great bit of kit. It just needs a few improvements, really. Anyway, it'd be really interesting to hear how you guys cut down skulls, particularly for some of the bigger species, perhaps. So please feel free to leave a comment below. And as per usual, please remember to like and subscribe.